So thank you so much for having me again on Dynamics Con. Well, this time I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I'm going to try to explain in 40 minutes on how I manage my team for product and customer development. Now, to be able to do that, maybe I should start explaining about myself. Now, I'm Waldo, and what you might have guessed, Waldo is not my real name. I'm Erik Wauters. And about 20 years ago, I started a group, a Navision group within a big company called Kronos in Belgium. And this Navision group turned into a company called eFacto Business Solutions, which I'm still working at. So it's kind of like a 20 years experience that I will be talking about today. I'm also a blogger. I'm also quite active in the community as a speaker, and like today, basically. But what we'll be talking about is that exact experience that I've been building and I've been doing basically the past 20 years, and that is a development manager. Basically, I'm responsible for anything technical at eFacto, and at this moment we have a team of 20 developers. We have about 350, a little bit more customers, and we actually do quite a lot at these customers. But I mean, 20 years, we have been doing quite a lot of customizations. We have quite a big development team. So we do a lot of development. That's kind of like the thing. So a lot of customizations, both still on-prem and on SaaS. And we do product development as well, again, both on-prem and on SaaS. And you can imagine that this comes with challenges. This comes with deployment challenges. It comes with quite a lot of challenges. That's basically what I would like to talk to you about today, on how basically we manage that within our company. And don't forget, if you have any questions, there is the conference chat. Please note it down, and I will try to get back to that after this session. Okay, so the agenda is no agenda. I tried to have kind of like a different approach in this thing. I am going to talk to you about the rules that I try to live by within my company. Rules, maybe that is the wrong word. Maybe we can call it visions. Maybe we can call it like mottos. Things I try to keep in the back of my mind with every single decision that needs to be taken. And obviously, again, focus is a technical. I'm a development manager, so that is going to be my focus of today as well. So, first rule, first vision, first motto. Knowledge is not what distinguishes you. Ooh, knowledge. So share it. And I mean, I really live by this. I mean, knowledge is something, especially in the IT world. I mean, I might know something today, and tomorrow it's old. As like Bill Gates said once, IT knowledge has the shelf life of bananas, and it's exactly like that. So if we have now like new knowledge, it's best to apply that with as many as at all possible, and that makes knowledge useful. So the first topic I'm going to talk a little bit about is how do we manage knowledge within eFacto. Well, first of all, we have a concept that is called dev leads. We don't really apply a lot of levels of hierarchy within the company, but we do have some people, dev leads, who are responsible for managing the knowledge, but also managing the quality and the knowledge at the same time. You'll see what I mean, because that's basically what I will be talking about the entire time. So that's their task. So they are involved in a lot of things together with their developers. They will be involved in the kickoffs, in the debriefings, but especially also in the code reviews. Yes, we do code reviews, and we do a lot of code reviews. Basically, every single pull request will be checked. And this is also how we get to know people, right? What is your um, capability in terms of certain pieces of development? How well are you in terms of performance related coding? How well are you in terms of API related coding? All these kind of things. By these code reviews, we really get to know people, and we really are triggered in how to manage their knowledge. Yeah. So another thing is that we have regular dev meetings. We call them dev meetings. It's basically just a structured meeting, weekly, bi-weekly, sometimes every 3 weeks. Depends a little bit on what we feel is necessary. But regular meetings with a very strict structure. We have like 20 minutes of an overview, like just to get to know what everyone will be doing the next couple of days, weeks, so that we have like an understanding and we can basically help them in achieving in a qualitative way. And then we have 40 minutes deep dive, what we call deep dive. Basically, it's also aligning everyone's knowledge again. So aligning everyone with the guidelines of maybe new features, maybe new things that is now maybe part of the new compiler or anything like that. Now, these deep dives, it's not just during the dev meetings that we do these deep dives, but this is an opportunity to share knowledge, which, yeah, not everyone can attend at the same time sometimes. So what we do is we record them and we actually manage them quite significantly. Like we add them in streams, we put a table of contents to it so it's searchable, we tag them, and so on. So maybe I can briefly show you that. I showed that in the wrong browser, so this is the one. So just a list of videos that we actually are building up during the many dev meetings that we have. And again, that's part of the knowledge management, because that's knowledge that is being shared and can be addressed at any point in time. Like lately I've been sharing quite a lot on Business Central performance, and then you have these types of videos. This is a performance video which gets a table of content, and that makes it just searchable, and so on. And then we have a concept that we call improve this code. This is actually something regular, at least once a week, that we share a piece of code like this one. This is actually a real example. We share that in a Teams channel, and that people can comment on, like, look, if you would come across this, would you have any improvements that you could do? And when you look at this code, by the way, yes, there are absolutely improvements. And usually when I share this kind of code, there is an improvement that one could do. And then we have a chat about that. Different people have different opinions about the same piece of code. And you cannot imagine how useful this is. People really contribute. They like it. They actually are really learning from it as well. So another vision: the higher you aim, the higher you'll go. Even when you don't reach that bar, just think about it. Just think about it. If you put the bar this low, do you really think this jumper will jump as high as he can? No, he will jump just over that bar and that's it. So if you put the bar as high as possible, then at least you are aiming for the maximum potential of a certain jumper in this case, or developer, right? That is kind of like the idea. Obviously, it's our job, the dev lead's job, to make sure that people can go over the bar as well. And we will guide them and we will manage that, and so on and so on. So the question then is, how high do we set that bar, right? Well, first of all, test-driven development, so important. You have probably heard it from many people. Well, test-driven development is one of the options, one of the things that will drive your quality, and that is something that we all need to implement. I'm very sure of that. It's not should not be an option. Another thing that we do is we have a very strict, let's not call it strict, a very good set of development guidelines that guide us into how to code for performance, how to code for readability, maintainability, how we can upgrade as soon as possible, and so on. Also, we want everyone to do the same. I don't expect better code from person A than from person B. Basically, it should all be the same. Just imagine that if you have like 5 developers and you have one problem, and you let all 5 developers solve this one problem. I think it's very important that people solve that problem the same way as well. If developer A would code like 90% the same as B and C and D, then all developers can maintain each other's code as well and read easily each other's code as well. So we really try to let everyone code the same way, follow the same guidelines, follow the same design patterns, which I actually already shared in other sessions, quite a lot of them. Everything has to be ready for the cloud. A very important bar that we set. Any code that we write is not for on-prem only. It should never be on-prem only. That app-JSON target that you can set should always be cloud. Always. .NET interoperability doesn't exist. Yeah. Everything that you ever do should be future-proof. That's kind of like what we would like to achieve, and where we set that bar as well. So that's kind of like it needs to work in the foreseeable future. Now, one bar that we set ourselves at Effecto as well is the continuous upgrades bar. And you might say like, duh, it's SaaS. It gets upgraded every single month, but also on-prem. Just think about that. If we get our on-prem customers on the same level as our cloud customers, I can promise you, you make yourself easier that way. If I only need to maintain one version of the product, even in SaaS and on-prem, being the one version that I need to maintain. But how can I do that? Only when also on-prem customers gets upgraded very regularly. So that's a bar that we set, and that's, in my opinion, quite high. We will talk a little bit more about that later. How do we reach that bar? Well, I mean, probably every slide I can talk about for a few days, but I noted down what I think is the most important reason or ways on how we reach that bar. And first of all, it's the use of DevOps. I can't stress it enough. By using DevOps, it automates so much. It gives us so good overview on, and it's actually a guard for quality as well. I mean, we set that bar somewhere, so let's use the tools that we can use to meet that bar. So yeah, we have DevOps, which automatically checks a lot: the code cops, the test, the compile, breaking changes, the upgrade, a lot. And if every check was okay, then it still helps us to automatically deploy. And by the way, when you have an automatic deployment, you have something that is done always the same way. When you would have something manual, then you make mistakes. It's as easy as that. So anything that you can automate, well, it helps you also to prevent mistakes. And when you prevent mistakes, you're doing a quality job. Continuous code review. Again, I already talked about that, but yes, we are code reviewing. That's our dev leads, and this is continuous way. I mean, we are code reviewing every single pull request. Do we track every mistake? Probably not. But we are code reviewing every single pull request. So at least we attempt to get where we want to be. So what we do during this code review, we check for guidelines, right? We have these development guidelines. I'll talk briefly about that later as well. This code review is a perfect opportunity not to just see what quality a developer delivers, but also to check if the guidelines are being implemented as well. Now we do that with multiple people. As said, the dev leads. I've got three dev leads for 20 people, and probably very soon we'll have a fourth, which all help in that. And I can tell you, the more people, the more eyes, and the more different angles that is being looked at for the code. One can be more looking at testability, while I might be more looking into performance kind related issue. But the nice thing is that every single piece of code will at least have one angle that is being looked at, and that way, yeah, everyone gets multiple angles by their code, or their code are being looked at from multiple angles. That is that is interesting, because you really see people improve over time that way. Hiding complexity. So how do we reach that bar? It's simply by not making it too complex for people. Just imagine that if people would have to take care of anything Docker, take PC Container Helper as an example. Freddy has given us a library to make our lives easier. And that's actually something that we like to do in our company as well. If I don't think that a certain knowledge is necessary for a developer to be doing a good job, then I try to take away that complexity. I've got some examples which I will come back to later as well. And I sometimes get the question, yeah, that bar, all nice and well, but what if the customer joins the dev team? You have set a bar, but maybe he simply doesn't care. And if he joins the dev team, well, what then? Well, I would say good question. And this is one discussion that I have once in a while, with a customer that has developers on the bench and would like to contribute, because if they have developers on the bench, they are probably cheaper than we are. Well, to be honest, I'm quite strict in that. First of all, that's a mixed interest, a mixed focus. Customer wants it as cheap as possible. We need to do a good job. If we are responsible, well, we have every reason to do a good job. Yeah. So that's maybe the question. It's the question of responsibility. Should the customer join our team? Are we still responsible for the end result? And then, yeah, what I always try to do is come up with some kind of comparison. Now, all I can come up with is like we're all swimming in the same pool at that point. But customers might be wanting to jet ski in the pool, and I might want to scuba dive. And at some point, that's not simply gonna work. And in a way, I think either I'm responsible and I will decide how things work and how it's developed and who develops, or the customer is responsible and then we can do it his way. But there cannot be a shared responsibility. I don't think that works. But I have seen situations that it might work. And the only thing that I can only say is good arrangements make good friends. So as long as there is a discussion beforehand with the customer, like, look, this is what we might run into. And at that point, who takes the decision, who takes responsibility, right? And also, in a way, we are being paid as a partner for being experts. Let us be experts. And if, like, in many cases for the customer development, he might be fully focused Business Central developer, and then he is not a weak link. But in many cases, there are weak links because it's not the only thing that I need to do. The Business Central is just one of the many things. And in the team, it's like a chain. A chain is just as strong as the weakest link. So you need to really just talk with your, again, good arrangements make good friends. So talk to your customer, see that the team works. And if the customer joins the team, then just make it work. If you can't support it, don't do it. Really important. And I think a question that is not asked a lot, unfortunately. Just go back in time, just go back to hybrid development. I can go on for hours about this, but I won't, don't worry. But I think it's a good example if in the thing, like, can you support it? Just think about it. Just compare it with a hybrid car. I mean, you have the complexity of an internal combustion engine, and you have the complexity of an electrical engine. What do? You mix them, and you have the complexity of both. I never thought that was a good idea. And hybrid in any kind of situation, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense. You make it much more complex, and probably at some point it's not future proof. And we actually knew this from the start, from the moment that hybrid development, where we would change some kind of CAL part and then build symbols and then had some app part there as well. Just imagine support. From the moment there is a support case, debuggability, how can I update or deploy that? I mean, that was no, simply no. Another actually example was like 1 year after that, when Microsoft came with code customized base app. I mean, evenly worse. This is as hybrid as you can go today, where you code customize the base app, some changes, probably only events, but still some changes, and then have another app dependent from that code customized base app. I mean, that code customized base app, the base app itself is something. It's too large. You make your life difficult. And why? Because you want to hang on to the design that you have been doing for 20 years. Maybe it's time to change the design. I mean, the same question you can ask yourself here: is it still maintainable? Can I still support this? Is this future proof? And definitely, is this upgradable? In terms of upgradability, I think it's many steps back. um, Now, obviously, there are always exceptions, but in my opinion, this is something that should have been avoided. In I will say, because you can does not mean you should. There are many situations that sometimes you simply, well, a feature should not exist. So what did we do in the company? Well, simply apply the 100% rule. Either 100% CAL, everything CAL, and we did that quite a long time when AL was on the table already for quite some time. Even in NAV 2018, we were still implementing 100% CAL solutions, simply because we could support that. And the hybrid part, that I wouldn't make friends in the support team. Let's say it like that. And or 100% AL. From the moment we had a product, from the moment there was an opportunity that we could solve the customer's problem in pure AL, that's what we would do at that point. But no mixture, no mixture, no. Next vision: only invent the wheel once, which probably sounds very familiar and logical and all that. Yeah, but maybe it isn't that. I see a lot of things being reinvented once, and I'm going to touch some examples that might make this more make more sense. So, if you take a look at our product, our Effecto product, which is it's called Distri Apps, and yeah, well, it consists of quite a lot of sub apps. Let's call it like that. So, the one offering, one product. Well, to be honest, it's going to be about 6 offerings, but at this point, it's one offering. It's 35 apps. With the test apps, it's like 70 apps. But not all of them are like apps in the normal sense. Some of them are also what I call frameworks, but what in this sentence you would call a wheel. Things that have been reinvented and reinvented and reinvented every single time. As you see, for instance, in this screenshot here at the bottom, you see the REST framework. Well, this is exactly what it is. It is a REST framework. It helps us working with REST calls easier. And then a little bit on top of that, you see here the Effecto Meta framework. Again, a framework that helps us in this case, messages. I will come back to that in a minute. And we have a few of these frameworks, wheels, things that we tend to do time and time again at customers, or details that we need time and time again at customers. And we just want to make that as easy as possible for the developer, because I can tell you he will get or she will get much happier that way. If it's much easier to call a web service, to give a very simple example, well, I can tell you it helps a lot. And we have a few of those apps. I noted them down now, not all of them, but the REST app is actually one of the best examples I have. And I even shared that, by the way. I think I can click this now. Yes. So there is a GitHub repository, the Waldo 1001 waldo.rest app, which is actually just a bunch of code to make web service calls easier. I have a code example in a minute. But the same for the print app. Printing is always a problem, and automatic printing is a problem. And Microsoft comes with a universal print app and these kind of things. Well, when Microsoft came with Universal Print, we already had our print app, and that's actually exactly what it does, being able to print through an API. Same for file handling. Remember when I said it needs to be cloud ready? Everything that's the bar needs to be cloud ready. Also printing, also file handling. So we created some kind of API that we can talk against to handle files on the local drive, for instance. Print labels, the meta app, topic app, which is quite interesting actually, but it would take me like a few hours to explain. It's basically solving the problem to move data from one company to another, or from one tenant to the other. Just imagine you have an app for that, and all you need to do is set up a few parameters and data gets moved. That's it. That solves any kind of inter data move, inter synchronization, let's say, or intercompany kind of things. So yeah, these are kind of like the what we call frameworks, development frameworks. And what is it? Well, it makes development life easier. If I just take this example here, where we have lots of code, and you know the problem of let's say a somewhat more complex web service call, where you need to set headers and it needs to be in some kind of order and all that. Well, with the REST framework, it's just less code, and the order really doesn't matter. From the moment you say send request, it will combine and will basically just execute the code on the left. So it makes it just every single web service call much easier. Same for the meta. The meta, actually, the end goal is being able to set up a structured way to share data. So this is actually a record. You see here a record of table 23, the vendor table, and you see on the bottom a few fields of this vendor table. Now this is actually an app, the meta app, that can create that data. And the idea is, I mean, we are in an app world. We never know what's in the vendor table. It could be like a collection of 27 apps, where all of them extending the vendor table. And yeah, thing is, we need obviously that data as well. So the idea there is, okay, from whatever app that extended in whatever field or whatever table, build myself a structured way, a JSON, with that metadata. And you can see there is some user interface going on, where I would be able to set up some kind of queue. So it would kind of like create messages from the moment, in this case, where we modify, delete, whatever, do with the vendor. And then on the other side, to be able to process this message, there needs to be a parse. So we need to be able to, like, if I get my JSON, it needs to be brought back to a regref. And that is exactly what the simple parse meta tag record does. It parses that JSON into a regref, and again, with one line of code as a developer, I can, get that at that point. So working actually with these messages is actually so easy. That is what I mean with these frameworks. We need to try to make the developer as easy as at all possible. So everyone should follow the same design guidelines, and these design guidelines are for me very important. I'm not going to go into too much detail, because I simply don't have the time. But as I already said, I do have a few, and the most important, let's share that here. Like test-driven development. Very simple. Every single pull request, we will check if the pull request is accompanied by a test. Because if you change business logic, either the test needs to be changed, or a new test needs to be written. That's very simple. I mean, every single pull request, I expect test. Yeah, and in this case, one line of code has been changed. You see that? That's the top part, and the bottom part is the new test that was introduced to check this one line or one changed line. Okay. And then we have this generic event pattern. For details, I'm going to refer to my first session that I did for Dynamics Con, where I went far more into detail on this pattern. But this is actually a coding pattern that we apply, I think, 85% of the time. All code, all significant code goes into this pattern. And the main part of this pattern is, first of all, having this wrapper, event wrapper, and the ability that we are able to decouple the event into our own. Now, just imagine that this code is all over the place, and I don't really need to imagine that because it is really all over the place. Because again, this is what we apply like 85-90% of the time. Any kind of code that we write will probably be in a method code unit. Now, just imagine that from the 4,235 objects that you have created, you basically have 5,000 and more events. And I didn't really need to do anything for that. Just apply a design rule. And thanks to these events and having like these 5,300, which is kind of like a lot, events in our product, implementing the product makes it extensible. And this makes that I'm not just able to implement my product, I'm also able to extend it, customize it at the customer side, and maybe solve stuff in it. I mean, just imagine that there is a bug in this method. Well, I've got this handle pattern, so I can basically just disable that method and implement my own version for that customer and basically just solve one off at that point, that bug, if it would be very urgent. Yeah. Mind performance. Yeah, well, any kind of check that we do, we have always performance in the back of our minds. I think that is something that we always need to be mindful for. Event subscription isolation, we just put events in separate code units. If again, I will have a lot of code units in my application that will have events. The idea there is that we isolate the subscriptions only for the purpose that it's necessary, right? Because every time you call a subscriber, it will load the code unit, and the bigger the code unit, well, just imagine that all your subscriptions are in one code unit. Well, it will load that one code unit quite a lot, and that doesn't actually make sense in terms of performance. We try to isolate, and the idea there also is like, I would like to know for this module, for this app, for this particular um, functionality, where am I subscribing to? What am I hooking into? Yeah, and that's actually a really nice description. Just that one code unit. Oh, I'm just hooking into the insert of this record, and that's it. Yeah, so that is a really nice description as well. Interface driven, I think from the moment we had interfaces, we have been implementing what we call the facade pattern before there were interfaces, but at this point actually we are implementing quite a lot of interfaces as well, just because we want to make as the functionality as generic and extensible again as at all possible. And naming conventions, yeah, well, some of them we have some structure for object names, some structure for folder structure, so that actually an app keeps being readable. If you don't know, if you know that it's not going to work tomorrow, then don't even bother. Well, I basically, this is a repetition of what I already said, but what I wanted to point attention to here is the fact that to be able to be future proof, we also need these continuous upgrades. And what we also on-prem, what I already mentioned. And what we did is actually to make that possible is, first of all, well, a full a process within DevOps, including the deployment, but second of all, also it being able to upgrade the customer easily. And that's not just apps, it's also infrastructure. So we decided to install every single customer based on a Docker container. And every customer is now able to upgrade by a simple Docker pull. That is why Docker is so important. Last but not least, tools. It's not really a vision, but the thing is, whatever we can simplify, well, then it makes sense to invest in tools. It saves time, it can prevent mistakes, and it prevents support. Whatever it can prevent is probably a good idea. Also, it is is a way to automatically document. Just a few examples. Like disconnect RDP. Back in the days where we needed to update lots of customers with new legislations, well, the one thing that was holding us back for doing like a very fast job on that was being able to connect that to the customer, because this customer had like a VPN connection and other customers had like other VPN connections, which like, I mean, this was a pain. So we started to turn that around. If you want to work with us, this is the way we connect. So every single customer is actually, we are able to connect to every single customer through the same way. And even more than that, as you see here on the left, it's GDPR compliant as well. Another thing that we need to take care of, at least in Europe, is to make sure that nobody knows a password. So we started tooling around that. So, and at this point, nobody knows a password, and everything is logged, and so on and so on. But the fact that every single connection to the customer, if we would need to connect to the server at the customer side, then at least we have that connection. Yeah. We don't need to think about that. Another thing is, remember the hiding complexity. Well, we at de facto hit the complexity which we call Docker. Anything Docker, development related basically, is actually managed on central servers. So we have a Docker server. We will set up new Docker containers for you from the moment you need them. And all you need to do is like provide 5 fields, and we can provide that. And as you see here, just from 3 containers that I created, one is not running, the other one is not created yet, and then the third one here is actually running. And you see here what I can do with that. I can obviously stop, restart my containers, but more importantly, I can navigate to the web client, indicating that this is also accessible from the net. And you see here, for developers, we can even just get the long JSON and start coding against that container. Yeah. The same thing we have for number ranges. We will manage number ranges. Just in a team, you need to do that, and so on. And obviously, DevOps. There is a lot of automation that we did in DevOps. Validation automation, build automation, deployment automation. You see here just an example on how we approve or disprove certain things. And here a screenshot on how we deploy as well. This has turned into a big investment. I mean, a big investment. And to be honest, I mean, this is 20 years, and obviously you always invest a little bit and you improve a little bit, and over 20 years, lots of little bits gets into a huge chunk of useful stuff. I realize that. And for starting partners, this can be like, yeah, a huge step. I also realize that. So in that perspective, I do like to mention this tool here, COSMO Azure DevOps and Docker Self-Service. This is a tool which has out of the box anything you can dream of. It manages Docker for you. It hides that complexity. It manages DevOps for you. It hides that complexity. It is highly automated, and it basically it's a dream for developers. And if I would have known other way, if this would have been existed 20 years ago, or when we invested, for instance, for Docker and DevOps, I mean, this would have been a no-brainer for me to use. But yeah, in the meantime, we did invest in it, so that's basically why I don't use it. But do look at it. If you find that tooling might help you, this is a tool that is highly advanced and can help you. Yeah, just Google COSMO, Azure DevOps, and Docker self-service, and you should end up there. So this was it. This was my story. Again, if there are questions, I hope you enter them into the chat. I think there are still time to add them into the chat. But foremost, I would like to thank you first. Thank you again for this opportunity. It's always an honor to be part of the DynamicsCon family. And I've been given an honor 3 times, and I really appreciate that. So this was my story, and let's meet in the chat room. Hey, AJ.
Hey. Right. Well, that was a story. Completely different to what we are used to see from you.
Yeah, that is true. I'm not used to, let's say, talk about myself. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, normally we get a lot of code and PowerShell stuff or whatever, and well, it's completely different. Well, but yeah, there were a lot of questions actually. A lot of questions were already answered until you stopped answering.
Yeah, you told me, hey, shut up, stop typing.
Yeah, but I had a couple of questions already copied in Notepad, and then I removed them because you were already answering them. But anyway, so levels of complexity, something that you can add to that or explain.
Well, that's something I didn't explain really in the session, but that's also not something that we do in the development team. That's something that has been done in the, let's say, functional team. That's how we call that. We kind of like split like in functional and development teams. And it's basically a way to communicate complexity, right? So kind of like what do we need to create and who would be able to execute that? That's basically to overcome that. While we have 4 levels, P1, we call it, to P4, where P4 would be like a new functionality that needs to hook into the default Business Central stuff. Usually the more complex kind of things. And P1 would be like completely simple things like creating new fields and put that on a page. P2 would be creating those same fields and moving them to a posting routine, maybe to other tables. These kind of things. So we try to give that levels of complexity, and that gives us and the planning a little bit of an indication, like, okay, who would be able to solve this?
Exactly. So you have developers with their level of complexity that they are able to handle, right?
Typically, junior developers will start at level 1, obviously, and they will work their way up. And this is, junior developers are obviously being monitored by their coach. The coach does not have to be the dev lead, by the way, but in many cases it's the dev lead. But in any case, they are being like coached and judged, let's say, and at some point they are mature enough to go to level 4, and they are basically completely plannable at that point.
Got it. Okay. So we got a question from Klaus. Could you please make this session into a book?
Yeah, but later I found out that he just wanted to throw it to somebody's head. So,
but still,
hopefully that was a joke. What?
Or wouldn't it be an idea? Maybe just a blog series. I mean, it makes sense.
It makes sense. Maybe that makes sense. I have been without creativity in terms of blogs quite some time, but yeah, maybe it's a good series. Let's do it. Why not?
Right. So, a question from Henrik: when you do a per tenant extension, are you using the same patterns, the same framework, everything the same as for the real apps?
Yes, we do absolutely exactly the same at customers. The reason there is upgradability and extensibility again. So you cannot just remove testability, right? Testability, you need to test to be able to upgrade. And where we set that bar, like we want to upgrade our on-prem customers as well, we need to test them. So every single thing that you create need to be tested. Testability is in place. But also you have other partners that would be able to extend to your extension. So it needs to be extensible. So that method pattern will be done as well. And then you have obviously the simplest reasons, like the more exceptions you make, the more chaos you make. So in a way, to make everything the same, like just develop the same way for customers and for product, that makes it the clearest at all possible and the simplest communication to everyone. So
Okay.
Everything the same.
So another question, because we have just 2 minutes left, I think. A question from Robert. How do you structure the subcode units? Are you structuring them per use case or per account or per feature, or how's that done?
Well, we usually have multiple features in one app, right? And every feature, we sometimes call it modules when it's a little bit bigger than a feature, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. Every feature or module gets a subfolder. And usually every subfolder has a subcode unit. So we can kind of like distinguish all the objects that was needed for a certain feature, right? Including the subs code unit, the subscriptions that was necessary to hook into the default functionality or maybe other functionality within other apps.
Okay. So maybe that's worth to have another blog post about, by the way.
I think we have a list.
You should take a list. Just one minute left, I think. A small question, I think, from David. How many salespeople, functional consultants do you need to feed those 20 developers? Just a number.
Wow. We have 5 sales, and we have about the same number of functional consultants.
So there must be something to keep you busy.
And then there is like overhead, like me, some management and stuff. As well.
Right. Then we got a question from KB, and we only have 1 minute left. Can you tell more how your dev leads work? Do they also have development tasks? So do the dev leads do development? Or other two
dev leads are actually full-time developers, but then also doing the coaching job. I see we only have a few seconds, so I think we are going to be thrown off.
Yes. Well, thanks, Waldo, and thanks to the audience.
Thank you. Thank you for moderating.
And we'll see you maybe in the chat, whatever.
Yeah.
That's the call.
See you.
The watch party.
Bye bye.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.